Hello and welcome to the Jumpstart Podcast with Jeffalytics. I'm your host, Jeff Sauer. Today, we have our 47th episode, and it's going to be another Jeff-isode. No guest, just Jeff talking to you from his rental place in Porto, Portugal. I just got done with my morning run, feeling good, and I wanted to talk a little bit about putting yourself out there. Now, a lot has happened since my last solo episode, so I wanted to start off by just giving you some recent developments in my world of marketing. In the last episode, I shared a ton of partnerships that I had in place where I was cross-promoting my audience with other audiences, doing a lot of joint venture type stuff. My Skillshare course, it's going to go live next week on May 16th. And once that's wrapped up and I finish my Online Marketing Institute, I'm actually going to ease up on partnerships for a few months while I get some of my own projects rocking and rolling. Now, one of those projects that I've been working on is having one-on-one conversations with a ton of agency Jumpstart course students. I've been doing that over the last few weeks, and the new group of agency owners and freelancers that are taking my course are all really sharp, and the conversations have been pretty awesome. And one of the biggest conversations is we talk about lead generation and sales process and how it goes to sell services. How do you sell services to somebody? And the reality is that there's not one plan. It's really all kinds of different things that can bring in leads. There's just so many ways to generate leads for professional service business that each conversation individually about what they're doing and how we can make it better, each one becomes really exciting because there's so many different ways to get people interested in your business. And actually, it's helped me think back to the different sales tactics that I've used over the years. And I've pretty much tried them all, and they've worked to varying degrees of success. While I'm not a trained salesperson myself, I've had to do a lot of trial and error to get at. But I've also been able to observe some sales geniuses who I've met over the years, people who are really good at sales and who have gone through sales training and understand all the aspects of getting somebody to buy what you're selling. And that's been particularly nice working with my business partners, Dan and Dave and Scott at 3Deep. They're all people who had sales background before coming into the agency world. And so they've taught me a lot about sales. But just because you're not trained in sales doesn't mean that you can't generate new business and new inquiries. In fact, I discovered my own groove when it comes to business development. And it mostly centers around being able to understand exactly what a client wants and being able to propose a solution quickly and on your feet. Basically, I can process any inputs that I hear in a meeting. I can think quickly about what solutions are available in the marketplace, what technology plays there are, and offer up my services as a way to help. And that's worked very well. If I get on the phone with pretty much anybody who's looking for marketing services, I can tell them a solution that they need to survive, and they're pretty confident that I can provide that to them. Now, I don't always want to provide that, but that's another story. Now, I could do a whole podcast about what works great in sales and lead generation, but I actually don't really want to do that right now because I think that telling you what works great in sales and marketing and lead generation is really just survivor biased. It's not sharing with you a blueprint for how you can do these things yourself. And what I mean by that is I could oversimplify things and make it sound easier than it really was, pat myself on the back, go out and drink a glass of Touriga Nacional here in the Douro River Valley in Portugal, which is a delicious wine. If you ever get a chance to try something from Porto, go with the Touriga Nacional. But I'm not going to do that because basically it's saying, hey, this is what's important. But the reality is you need to try a bunch of stuff and you need to see what ends up working. And the other thing is I could assign all of the credit to tactics that had nothing to do with actual sales success. The reality is that most success in selling services is probably a combination of just dumb luck and market conditions. And so I thought it would be way more fun to talk about a bunch of crap that I've tried and that I sucked at, or stuff that I've tried that took a while to gain traction and I wasn't sure if it was going to work or not. So let's do that. Now, this is going to be the top 10 things that I've tried to generate sales that didn't work, or I gave up before trying, or ended up working in the end. This is a long title, and we'll see where this leads. Number one thing that I've tried that didn't generate sales is cold outreach to prospective customers. So I haven't done a ton of cold outreach, mostly because I'm ethically challenged and I have a thin skin, meaning I haven't mass emailed 100 business owners and said, try out my solution, let's talk, because I think it's total BS to do that, and it doesn't really work very well. Mass mailing people with the same crap message, it sucks. And if you do this, you suck. So let's move on to number 2 pretty quickly here. Cold outreach to somebody who you've never met before, but you did a ton of research and you wrote them a personalized email. Now, this is a much better approach, right? But does it work? I only have a small sample size, but I feel like reaching out to a random person no matter how thoughtful your message, it's likely going to be ignored by them. So you better grow a thick skin if you're going to make this one work as well. I do think this is going to work out, but I haven't had a lot of success with it because I haven't really taken it to its fullest. The reason why is because it takes a lot of effort to research, and there's a lot that goes into it. And so mostly it's just laziness at this point. But I think I'm going to give that one another shot as I get better with developing a process. Number 3, growth hacking sucks. Okay, so I'm skeptical of the term growth hacking, especially when I see like a 22-year-old trying to connect with me on LinkedIn saying that they're a growth hacker. It's like, you don't even have a job yet. Like, what are you talking about? You're a growth hacker. Go back and play beer pong. You haven't hacked any growth at all. Whenever somebody talks about growth hacking, they cite the exact same story every single time, and it's a story about how Airbnb hacked into Craigslist and automatically posted all of their Airbnb apartments on Craigslist. So basically, anytime that a listing came up on Airbnb, it would be cross-posted onto Craigslist. So they'd take advantage of that audience, which actually worked really well for them to get started. But I'm wondering, is that the only growth hack that's ever happened? Yes, it was brilliant, but if you don't do it, you can't take credit for it. So when people tell you they're a growth hacker, then they tell you about what Airbnb did 10 years ago. That's not growth hacking. Growth hacking is an example like what I'm going to talk about in number 4. So number 4, growth hacking is actually pretty cool. So over this weekend, I got 2 emails that were super growth hacky, and I loved them to death. The first one, it targeted me by my email marketing platform, which is a relatively easy list to find, and it asked if I was overpaying. So I'm using ActiveCampaign, and it said, are you overpaying with ActiveCampaign? Fill out this 3-minute survey to find out, and we'll give you a $25 gift card. It was all value all the time, and it was from this company called Siftery. And I haven't really looked at their website at all, but that's pretty neat, right? They basically said, you might be overpaying. We're not going to charge you anything. We're just going to save you money. Amazing value proposition. So think about how you might be able to use that at some point. And the second one, this person actually sent me a personal YouTube video where he went through my site and he was on camera. He said, hey, Jeff. So I knew it was real, and it was the Jeffalytics website. And this guy's pretty much my new best friend now. Basically, he went through my site, poured over my site, probably spent an hour or 2 of research, getting to know me, established some context as to how he had learned about me in the first place, which I thought was really cool, and offered his services. And so I actually responded to him. He's one of the few cold outreach people that I actually respond to because he might be able to add some value to me. So I do understand, growth hacking is a term that gets put out there, but basically, if you're using technology to scale what you're doing in a creative way, that's pretty great. But growth hacking is not the same as spamming people. This guy made a video for me. He went to my site. He uploaded it to the internet. He did a ton of work. It wasn't spam. It wasn't unwanted email. It was one-to-one communication. So yes, if you can growth hack things where you can get one-to-one communication, if you can scale that, if you can record 10 videos and have somebody process them for you, and you can have somebody do your data collection, hey, that works out. That's pretty great. And that's growth hacking. Basically, you're taking something that would be labor intensive. It might take you a week to do one of them. You can do 40 of them in a week or 100 of them in a week, whatever it ends up being, if you do this the right way. And so that's what growth hacking is. It's saving yourself time and getting a very similar result in the end. Yes, growth hacking can be great, but don't call something growth hacking if you don't even know what it means and if you're not prepared for it. Do the things manually, get good at that first, and then worry about your growth hacking. Number 5, networking events are the worst. If you want to see grown-ass men and women froth at the mouth, go to a networking event and tell them that you're a marketing manager for a big brand in town. Honestly, once they know that you might have a marketing budget they can work with, you have a better chance of escaping alive from a dive cage in a Cape Town great white shark bin in the middle of the ocean than you do of getting out of that networking event without 5 business proposals, a bunch of terrible business cards, and a bunch of people wanting to work with you. And to those of you who go to a networking event hoping that you're going to get a home run, try getting to first base first before you get too far ahead of yourself. Okay? Number 6, never ever going to a networking event is much worse than going to a networking event. Yes, you don't want to look desperate by begging for clients, being a shark in the water, but you want clients, right? You have to put yourself out there, and networking is a way to do it. If this were dating advice, I'd be able to recite all the advice that I got over the first 10 years of my adulthood. Some stuff like saying, It's going to come along when you stop looking. And it did. I'm happily married. But business is not monogamous. You need more than one client to survive. And it's totally cool to suggest a menage a trois of clients, or an orgy, or a murder of clients, like a murder of crows. Okay, is this getting awkward yet? No, being awkward would be me telling you to go for a gangbang of clients. Moving on to number 7, being too sober to talk to anybody. Okay, this one might sound a little awkward. I am in no way advocating you getting super hammered at networking events or drinking in any way, because drinking doesn't solve any problems, and it often does create them. But sometimes it does work to have a glass of wine or two to ease the nerves if you're an introvert. Now, you're never going to believe this, but I am an introvert. I don't naturally see somebody out there and think, oh, I can't wait to talk to this person. It's more like, how can I avoid this person? That's just my natural personality. But after a glass of wine, I might be the one telling that person to go for a gangbang of clients. Okay, so maybe I'm a liability. But nowadays, after doing this enough times, no wine is needed to go and talk to people or to be my true self. And that's pretty great in itself. So if you're afraid to talk to somebody, maybe give yourself a little social lubricant to get started, but be careful with it at the same time. Don't do too much. Number 8, a problem that people have with putting themselves out there is thinking that they are not an expert enough to actually matter. And this is a tough one, because I know a lot of you are like, I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to talk about these things. I'm not going to go out and put myself out there. I'm just not an expert. And it's tough for me because I've never actually had this problem personally. I've always been confident in my digital marketing skills. And if anything, I've had overconfidence. I kid you not, when I was 24 years old, I told my brother that I was one of the top 5 people in the world in search engine optimization. Like, seriously, I actually claimed that 24 years old. I thought I knew everything. He laughed me out the door, and I've never heard the end of it. He actually even used this against me in my best man speech in my wedding. And my brother's been sending me to the sick burn unit ever since then for that one comment. But you know what? I've never apologized for saying that because I truly believed it at the time. I didn't think that there were 5 people who cared as much as I did about SEO. I'd read about SEO day and night for 2 years at that point. It was really important to me. It was all that I talked about, all that I cared about. It was all that I did. Now, was I really top 5 in the world at SEO at the time? As listener Jamie down in Melbourne would say, it doesn't matter. All that matters is that I believed it. And this is why it's hard for me to give advice, because I never had that confidence problem in this industry. And it's probably because I'm ignorant, blissfully ignorant, and I never even thought about it. But if you listening to this have imposter syndrome, then I ask you this. Do you know 5 people who care more than you about your craft? And what I mean is, do you know 5 people who care more or are more passionate than you about a specific thing that you have passion for right now? And I'm not talking about 5 people on the internet who you're never going to meet. I mean 5 people in your circle, 5 people in your local market. What's so scary about admitting to yourself that you are worthy? Why would you sell yourself short comparing yourself to somebody who's been around for a long time? You care about these things. You have passion. The semantics don't matter. It doesn't really matter that somebody else has been doing it longer. All that matters is that you are passionate about it. The thing is that there's not a governing body of how much of an expert you are in the world of marketing. There's nobody who's like, yes, this guy's level 4 Jedi. It's not a guild system. It's not like some kind of crazy feudal system. There's no ranking of people, and any ranking that we see is simply a flawed system designed by flawed humans. Life is not a popularity contest. All that matters is how others feel about the way that you display your passion. That's worth repeating. Life is not a popularity contest. All that matters is how others perceive your passion. Because people don't look at you and then qualify, is this the number 4 person? Is this the number 7 person? Is this the number 800 person in the world? All they think about is like, this person cares more about this than I do. I'd love to work with them. Number 9, life is a popularity contest. Yes, that's a direct contradiction to point number 8 and how I just ended. Now, I threw this one in there to troll myself just some more. Now, it's easy to say that life is not a popularity contest. But here's the secret. In the business world, it sometimes is. If for no other reason that being on one of the top 50 lists out there, it begets 2 more. And once you're on those 2 lists, you get 2 more after that. And eventually, you start to believe all that crap. You start to believe that you deserve it. And so, yes, I've been on a lot of top 50 lists out there, and eventually you get on enough of them, you're like, wow, well, I guess that's true. Whether it's true or not, whether I was any more or less proficient before I got on that list, doesn't really matter. Eventually you can start to believe it. But you need to put yourself out there in order to even be considered. And it's not about being on top blogger or top influencer lists. What I mean is that one of the only ways to really believe in yourself is to work really hard and to start to get recognition. But it doesn't have to be random public internet list. It could be that a client says good job, or it could be doing extra work for your company to help your company out. But what I can tell you is this: each little piece of validation gets so much sweeter and it makes it so much easier. Every instance builds on top of each other, and eventually you're going to believe it. Before I even published a single blog post as Jeffalytics, I think it was back in 2012, I had been doing internal blogging. I had been talking to people in my company for 7 years. So it took me 7 years of thinking that I was a great internet person before I finally put myself out there. I wish I'd have done it sooner. I really do. Now, if you want to get there faster than 7 years, if you want to get there to that point right away, then you need to put yourself out there more. You need to give your reputation more chances to multiply. You need to just keep on going for it. Being top 5 in the world doesn't matter. And you can believe me when I say that, because I'm one of the top 5 people in the world, and I'm telling you that. Number 10, you're probably going to suck at it. Let's end on a down note, like Empire Strikes Back. The truth is that you won't be good at something the first time you do it. You'll be much better on your 10th time. And if you've done it 100 times, you're going to be better on your 1,000th time. The secret that people don't realize is that, yes, you're going to suck. And then the other thing is that nobody cares. Nobody cares if you suck on your first episode of a podcast or the first time that you write a blog post, because nobody's going to read it. Nobody cares enough about you to read it on the first time anyway. I'm sorry that sounds harsh, but the reality is that it's true. The expectations are so low that it doesn't matter. When I started my podcast, it wasn't great, and it's still probably not great, but I think it gets better each time we put out an episode. And people tell me that when they go back and they get started and they look at the archives and they listen to episode 1 with Rand Fishkin, they're like, wow, you are so much better now than you were then. The quality of the audio is better then. You were tighter with the questions. The format's changed. There's so much that's improved since that time. And this is the 47th episode we've done this, and I look forward to getting better every time I do it. The thing is, if I find a podcast that I like, I'll go back and listen to their archives, and I'll feel the same way. Tropical MBA, their first 100 plus episodes, marketing in your car, it's gotten a lot better. That's Russell Brunson's podcast. Every podcast that I listen to, if I get excited about it now and then I go back to the archives, it's like, wow, this was terrible. And I don't mean terrible. I mean, it's probably still better than my podcast is right now, because they've been doing these for 300 episodes. But I mean terrible and then in relative to how it is now. And so they evolved. Do you think these people are embarrassed about their old episodes? Not really, because there's way more stakes in there now for the current episodes. So if you're at episode number 500 and you have 500,000 listeners, when you were at episode 100, you might have had 1,000 listeners, or, a very small number. So the stakes are much higher now, and that's why they put more effort into it. They build on top of it. When you get more listeners, you can get sponsors. You can afford better equipment. You can afford to put more effort into things. You can hire a producer. There's so many things you can do when you get better at something. So you need to fight through those first several of them and get better. I have a Quora thread, which we can link to in our show notes, and somebody says, I feel like I missed the boat on blogging. How do I get good at blogging? Hasn't the time left? And my advice was, write 100 posts on an anonymous blog on WordPress somewhere and then delete it. Because your first 100 posts are going to suck anyway. You might as well get it out of the way, so then you can get to your next ones, post 100 to 200, where people are actually going to listen and care, and you're going to have an audience. And so no matter where you are with putting yourself out there and getting out to that point, just consider that it's never going to be as good now as it is in the future. So get over that, because by the time that you get to be good enough to be worthy and all that stuff, you'll know it, because you'll have rode the momentum wave. So getting started worrying about being perfect, nobody expects that of you, and nobody cares. Nobody really is going to listen to you anyway. Maybe if you leave me a comment, I'll listen to your podcast for you and everything. But the reality is that you can't look at somebody who's been doing this for 10 years, 15 years, however long it is, and wonder why your first version isn't as good. Even in like sports, that's how it is. Like people always think of Michael Jordan as the greatest basketball player ever. But if you were to talk about Michael Jordan prior to 1990, you know what everybody would say is that he's not good enough to win a title, that he's selfish, he's a ball hog, he's not that great. You know, you could say the same thing about Apple computers. You know, they tried a bunch of stuff, didn't work out. And if you would have just, you know, in the 90s, give them a post-mortem, you'd say, hey, they are a great failure. And so we can't judge ourselves by where somebody's at right now without understanding the ups and downs. And yes, there are a few, we can use the word unicorns, whatever it is. There are a few companies that didn't really have very many downs, like Google or Alphabet, as you call them now. And Facebook actually had some downs. You know, for every one that looks like they've been impenetrable, if you look at the news, you'll see that there's all kinds of comments about Google's failing, you know, the bad stuff that Google's doing and stuff like that. So they're not immune to it either. Nobody is. Nobody's immune to it. So stop judging what's happening now with somebody who's been doing this forever with where you're at right now. Just put yourself out there, give it a shot. You don't have to be top 5 in the world. You just need to be more confident and better. Not even better, but you just have to be more passionate than the next person sitting next to you. And I have no doubt that that's possible because, you know what, I've worked in a lot of companies, a lot of marketing departments, and there's a lot of people out there who are just clock punchers who don't really care about anything but just collecting a check or just, you know, leaving that place, and that's it. It's just a job to them. If you really want to succeed, the first thing you can do is to make this not just a job to you, make it a career, make it something that is driving your passion. And that can really fuel everything you do moving forward. So hopefully you like that top 10 list. And if you have ideas for future Jeff solo episodes, I'd love to hear them. And so that's it for this episode. Visit Jeffalytics.com/outreach for show notes. And if you found this interesting, please leave a comment for me and make sure that you add a question that you want me to answer. Look forward to talking to you soon.